Well, it looks like Flory is up first with demos.
All right, so I'm going to demo the reordering of lists on swim lanes using drag and drop. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Well, it's very simple. You just grab a header from a list and you drag it and it reorders. Ta-da! That's the demo. If it fails, an error message displays and it just reverts back to what it was before. Any questions?
Can you do that again? Ooh.
Magic.
That's great.
That's it. That's all it does.
Remind me, do we have drag and drop working on individual issues yet?
Not yet. That's future iterations.
Future iterations. Got it. No, that's great.
Or you should be proud you're establishing a pattern that will live long on boards for all sorts of swim lanes. So it is non-trivial, just so you know.
No, and this
cool.
is, yeah, and this mutation I'm using, it's in GraphQL. So when we refactor boards, like normal boards, we'll be able to use this function just the same with very minimal changes.
Yay.
So it will benefit also like Epic boards, for example. That's it.
That's great, because conveniently that's the next big boards feature we'll end up picking up after swim lanes. So very thoughtful planning. Any other demos?
I don't think so. It's mainly on me. Still catching up.
No, you're good.
Getting those set up. Yeah, we could probably move on to Alexis's stuff. I'll play Alexis today, unless someone else wants to.
Go for it.
All right. First off, love it, she says to Flory. And then the next topic. All right, I'll just read off what she has to say here. I'm going to start bugging y'all for more often for feedback. Please take a look at these issues and leave any feedback you have. Let me know if there's any other way I can be more visible about designing or anything else I could do to better support you. So the first one she has here is around the program or Epic boards. And the next one is around swim lanes and lists. I don't know if there's anything to discuss around those today, but whenever you all get a chance, if you could click into those issues or epics and provide any feedback you have for Alexis there. I'm reading Gabe's as he's typing.
I'll verbalize, I guess.
Yeah.
It was really, since there's not a ton of stuff on the agenda, I just never see or get the overlap with Simon or Flory or folks in APAC. So I don't know. Just see their faces is great. And I don't want this to end just yet because it's only 6 minutes into our meeting. That's all.
Gabe, I wonder, since we do have a couple minutes, I wonder if we should share some of the news or some of the updates around customers that are starting to lead with Plan or starting to close deals where Plan is a leader in that decision. It's not an add-on necessarily from a customer who may be landing with like source code management, but they're actually intentionally choosing Plan intentionally choosing GitLab Plan over Jira. So we could pull up that issue or maybe just drop it in the agenda so we don't have to talk about customers and then make this video.
Yeah, I will try to find that and dig it up. I think it is interesting that we did or are about to win. I think it was an 1,800 seat gold deal, so just because of Plan. portfolio and just project management together, like, and everything, which was pretty crazy because that's a very big deal in terms of ISCV. And then there's also another potential opportunity for 1,500 premium seats that it wants to move away from People Tracker to use GitLab, and I'm meeting with them shortly to learn about that because they have some concerns, and I understand like where those concerns are. We don't really at this point calculate velocity automatically and a bunch of other things that People Tracker does nicely. But that coupled with the blog post that I read where there was a product manager comparing Jira with GitLab and saying they opted to go with GitLab because of the single application value proposition. Plus, we have enough functionality that they can use it instead of Jira, which was, I've never seen anything like that on the internet before. So that was a pretty big deal. I think we shall celebrate.
Yeah. That's why I thought it was worth bringing up. I linked an issue in the agenda that y'all should take a look at, and it just calls out, I don't know, a dozen and a half customers that plan is either leading with or a big component of the deal. It's really cool to see because it's validation that like we've all been working super hard, y'all longer than I have, at building this section or this stage, and it's starting to see some really great validation that we're on the right track, and the work we've done over the past several months is starting to bear fruit, which is great. So take a look at that issue. Awe and wonder of the deal size of these customers that are coming in using plan. Well, if there's nothing else.
Oh, there's something else.
Oh.
Late minute,
Yeah.
last second edition.
Oh, Julian, sorry.
Yes.
Go for it.
All right. So let me share my screen. Can everyone see? All right. So now when we close the issue, last time we just hit the edit button. Now what we do is we disable the button like this, and then there's a tooltip. And I want to know what you think of this, disabling the button and then showing the tooltip.
I think that's a clever way to still preserve the data so people know what it was without
Do we have a lot of mobile users using using GitLab at all? I don't know what our uptake is on mobile users. I've used GitLab on my phone usually when I'm checking something, and it's the tool is not generally accessible. I don't know if we.
I'll check. Yeah. Okay, I'll follow up on that.
2% of sessions generally, I think, last time I looked.
Most of the tooltips still will work on touch, then they'll show up. It's not ideal for links because then touching them activates the link. So you've got to kind of press and hold. So I'm not huge on tooltips in general, but most of them on icons and stuff will still work.
I wonder if we should maybe give some feedback to UX. I mean, 2% is probably not worth spending a bunch of cycles on, if that's still true. But
it becomes a bit self-fulfilling though. If we're not designing for it, then people don't use it. Like I'll often just not use my phone because I know it's terrible.
That's a great point.
Also, the most of the edit buttons we use GL link, but for health status and iteration, we're using GL button. So that's also a difference there. Yeah. Because with a button we can disable it, and that seems more semantic and
right. But yeah, to your point, Justin, I would be curious as to how much we want to target mobiles at this point, given we do have huge majority, like we expect most people are using it on computers for the most part.
Yeah, Scott Williamson recently mentioned that we should start to consider what we want to do, like what our strategy is, because we haven't had a strategy to this point. So I don't know what's going to come of that.
I don't remember where I exactly read it, but just this morning there was some document that outlined our strategy going forward, like the next year, and then like supporting mobile was one of the top I don't remember like where it was, but yeah, I definitely read it. So
Yeah, there's a couple things floating around, like supporting mobile, and then a very generic bucket of machine learning and AI. But no one has spent any, as far as I know, no one has spent any time like thinking critically about what that really means. So we should follow up and see where that's pointing, and then we can follow back up with the team and see where we might contribute to it. If there is a decision where we want to lean into mobile, like the plan stage is going to be impacted heavily, right?
I think we've got a lot we can improve for touch screens generally, which kind of affects iPads and bigger ones.
Yeah.
Just that, like I've raised my issues with like accidentally dragging stuff. I've accidentally moved a bunch of issues before, or like related links and stuff. Just from if you're dragging down, then it also grabs cards and stuff and you fling them halfway across the screen.
Yep.
I did that earlier today.
Yeah. And you can never tell what you've moved. You just hope someone else will notice.
Yep.
Accidentally unassign a bunch of issues. It's good.
I think, yeah, I would also, I'm interested in moving more towards like, if it's possible, doing a progressive web application where you think about offline first and you think about, I think native mobile, there's a lot of great things, and I built lots of them apps before that you can benefit from, but there's also something very appealing about being a purely progressive web application that does it the right way with the right architecture that works very well on native mobile as well as web. Same thing. I also, Justin, since you're an advocate upstream, I'm very interested in getting into machine learning and have a plethora of things where I would like to apply that to our stage. So,
yeah,
you know,
personally and transparently, like I see a lot of potential value in that for our stage over mobile. Like, I don't know. I don't see, if you're looking at Jira, for example, like they haven't invested very heavily in their mobile experiences because they assume the same. I'm sure they see the same data we do, where most of their users are using desktop. Doesn't mean we shouldn't have a usable experience though. So we should make sure we strike that balance. But for AI and ML, like there's a lot of interesting applications that we should think about and consider for future. Not now. We have a lot going on right now and a pretty clear focus, but next year, potentially. Well, anything else?
I added one other thing because since we have some front end folks here more than normal, and I haven't seen Donald in a week, I don't think it was anyone on our team, but someone else, I can't remember who, updated the milestone select file, and I think Kushal like saved the day with the fix, if I remember correctly. But I looked at that file and it was pretty nasty because it hadn't been touched in such a long time, and that one change that the other person made basically resulted in 3 defects that touched the bulk edited up sidebar, the issue sidebar, the milestone select within boards, and a bunch of other places where it pretty much made it unusable for 24 hours or more. And I think it impressed upon me the fact that like it's no one's fault. It's just like we have overlapping technologies, and I think we've made the decision to commit towards pajamas and refactoring things for that and being GraphQL first, all of which I want to support. But it impressed upon me the importance of when something that small makes a feature that gets used millions of times a day, literally like that drop down gets used millions of times a day, unusable for 24 hours. It's non-trivial. So I really wanted to I would like to start prioritizing getting every single plan feature that has a UI element switched over to using pajamas first and using GraphQL first, so that we have like non-overlapping technical solutions and can like basically we don't run into this situation where we have like jQuery mixed with Ajax, mixed with Vue, mixed with Axios, mixed with like all these other things. So Holly was kind enough to start the spreadsheet. If anyone wants to contribute to like helping us audit all of the places that we need to refactor to the newer ideal architecture, whatever that is, engineers can decide. I would love for y'all to fill that out so we can spin up issues and prioritize that. I think this fits nicely along with like our general shift towards focusing on usability. Defects and performance issues are just as much usability as like fixing actual UX problems. So it'd be great if y'all wanted to collaborate on that.
Gabe, is there a version of this for boards too? Since we're sort of in the trenches on that right now.
I would add a tab. So there's a couple tabs on there for the issue detail view, the list view, issue list view. We should have one for every view basically that there exists in every single field that exists. I don't know if it's worth bringing up, but at least with issues, we're also working towards like the idea of like having slots in the issue view and like turning each field into its own widget so that you can reorganize it eventually. Not to layer on, but if there is opportunity for like thinking about if we have to refactor these things, also taking that into account, it's worthwhile. But I don't really care as long as we get everything over to like our current tech stack. I would be ecstatic. So.
Agreed.
Yeah, there was a decent amount of discussion around how to go about handling all the implementation step of getting our front end components over to pajamas. I'm trying to find it and I can't. Simon, maybe you know of that issue? I thought it was within GitLab.
I'll have a look.
It exists though, right?
Yes, it does exist.
And there may be, I think the first step in that was to do exactly what you, Gabe, and Holly are doing with creating that spreadsheet of places that we use all of them, of essentially auditing them. So some of that work may be done already, but we'll find that issue and post it or add it to the agenda.
A question relatedly to avoiding lots of new bugs. I find that a lot of our existing like feature specs and QA specs do stuff like just create one issue and then like just that's generally pretty small, which is partly just because it's easier to set up that way and it does validate what we actually need. But like for that example, we were loading a dropdown and checking that an issue was there, but the bug was only if you're trying to search and there's more than 20 issues, which we don't usually have in tests. So I'm not sure if there's a way that we can like effectively start using bigger test data without also exploding the time it takes to run the tests, or if we should just assume that stuff will reliably work with multiple pages. But it seems like that's a kind of thing that can like break easily and then be missed by tests and not picked up.
I will say please 3 times with a yes before the 3 pleases.
All
right. And also, how can I help? It's one of the things that has been most prevalent in terms of like a spreading bug, which I don't know where it ever started or why, is the 20 limit thing on dropdowns, that you never match what you want and then you never can scroll further to get more of the things to find the things that you want from the list. So yes, I completely agree with that. I think we should maybe work with our stable counterpart and quality engineering and see if like that is a way to do it. I don't know enough about how all of that works, but let me know how I can help and support it and I will put my weight behind it.
Cool. Just keep testing stuff. Find bugs before our customers do.
I can do that.
Donald, this meeting's a little friendlier time for you now that you're out on the West Coast.
It is.
Will that make your overlap with your team better? Like, will you have better times now for now that you're out there?
With the front-end engineers at this meeting, yes. It's worse for like Kushal and Rajat. Now we have essentially no overlap, which will be fun to figure out. Like I had to meet with at a one-on-one with Kushal today, and it was late for him, but it was 6 a.m. my time. And my one-on-one with, I say Kushal or Rajat. My one-on-one with Rajat is at 4 a.m. my time now tomorrow, which I don't know if I'm going to make that one.
Yikes. Yeah, those might need to be shifted around.
Yeah. Really.
Daylight savings makes it equally annoying as well.
Yeah, it does. Will it be worse then?
It's worse for when you fall back.
I just have to have a like I normally have one day or one night where I'm working the opposite schedule to get that overlap, which is not too bad.
Yeah. So the nice thing about all remote is you just flex your schedule however you want to.
I have a 9 p.m. talking with Europeans time slot. So if anyone wants to talk to me, like that's my slot. Because otherwise it's like, yeah. But I mean, these days I'm working till midnight just because of my schedule. I mean, I'm getting lots of sleep and like getting up sensible hour, but you know, yeah. It's sleepy.
How's the homeschooling going, Charlie?
Oh yeah. I mean, we're pretty used to it because we've done it for many years. But yeah, we needed a bit of a change because you know when my partner and my daughter were kind of getting a bit sick of each other. I think they just needed kind of a break from each other, which is fine. I mean, it's really typical. So I took over. So this morning we did a bunch of her algebra and starting and just some for maths, and then we did some cooking because we cook lunch every day together, so she's learning how to cook and also about science things like I don't know, absorption and caramelization and cooking science and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. And then I work after that. So when I don't have like circus training and stuff. So yeah, I don't know, my day is 100% full all the time. I'm talking about 100% efficiency not being that optimal. Anyway, I'm doing that.
Hey, isn't it? It's meant to be 70 something, so you have Slack.
No Slack. There's kids involved. There's no Slack. But I don't know. It's working. I mean, my weekends are my Slack, I guess. I really decompress on weekends. I don't do anything.
I can relate to that.
I was going to have a week off or 2 weeks off next month. And then because of COVID, a whole bunch of stuff got shifted with their extracurriculars. So like the play that they're in for the drama class got shifted. So right in the middle of my time off, because I was going to take them on a road trip. So I've had to move it. So yeah, no rest for the wicked or whatever. I'm really tired.
Gabe, you want to mention the performance okay?
Sure, I can. I feel stuck between like a rock and a hard place to a certain degree because like one of the UX OKRs is to move everything over to pajamas as much as possible. Then engineering, it's improve the performance of like the top 5 used pages in GitLab by 25%, of which the issue list and the issue detail view are among them. And then there's also like the improve like, MAU, whatever for product. I'm more interested in seeing if we can find the overlap between the UX and engineering OKRs of if we refactor things to pajamas or like the point above, like is there an opportunity to pair that with like quick wins in the back end so that like we can kind of like have a compounding effect, so to speak. But I just didn't want this to get lost in the ether because it's like just with refactoring things to pajamas, this is equally important to me. And I want to help like prioritize the things that will move it forward. And then we're like, I don't know, a month into the quarter almost. And given cycle times, if we plan things for 13.5, which starts, we basically have one release now to plan and prioritize this. And given our like timeline of when we're supposed to have that done by, we have 14 days to figure out everything we need to figure out in order to create the issues, in order to prioritize it for 13.5. So PSA / would love collaboration on it.
Yeah, I've been spending a fair amount of time with the site speed tests on the issue detail page. And it's actually kind of interesting because like a lot of the times I don't see in site speed what like it seems like this metric of largest contentful paint, which I had to learn about. It's sort of like the largest element on the page when it's visible or interactive. I think it's like I guess one of the new standards for measuring web performance, but it's kind of funny what Chrome ends up picking as that element. So sometimes in like an issue detail, it's just like a random p tag, I guess, because it's, you know, the way that it determines what's largest, but it's not, you know, it's not like a whole element that we can specifically target. It might just be a p tag in the description. But moving things up the waterfall, like the notes call, I think the discussions call is like near the top of the waterfall, but the notes call is still pretty far down. So the notes call doesn't, it's like pushing the waterfall out a lot longer than it could be. So I'm not sure what the like actionable trigger to pull there is to like get it to be earlier, but it seems like that might be an easy way to, not to like specifically focus on gaming the metric, but like if we trust, oh nice, Donald. If we trust the metric is doing what it should be doing, then that might get us a healthy win on that front. Donald, if you're working on that, that's great.
Yeah, I'm not really fixing it, but I'm adding it to the, we have we just recently added startup JS that you can explicitly define what essentially the order of the Ajax calls you want to make, so we can bump up notes, the notes JSON higher up the waterfall than it currently is. So I should be adding it this week, hopefully.
One thing too, don't ask me to look for the issue right now, but it was related to some epic having to do with getting GitLab under 500 milliseconds performance. The discussion was around pagination of this notes or whatever, but there's a discussion which then fetches the notes, but really like if you list all the notes, if you just call notes, they still have all the discussions in there. So you don't need to have two separate requests to get all of the notes on an issue. So I'm wondering if there's a way to like just make one request for notes and then build the discussions from the notes. That may not be faster, but apparently some engineers, I think Flora, you were on that issue. Simon, maybe you were too, thought that it was a viable path. Could look into that.
I don't remember.
It was many
Is
moons
that
ago.
Nick's? It might have been Nick's issue.
Sounds
over
right.
on Crave, I think. And I think the backend is done. There was some backend work around that was just recently finished, and the crate stage may be working on the front end. I'm pretty sure I was just pinged on that. If I find the
Yeah, I think they were working on it on MRs, which we could probably hopefully relatively easily get over to the issues details.
It wouldn't really help the number, but it would help. This is sad to say. It wouldn't help our OKR, but it would help the end user's perception of performance if we did what is it called? Optimized fetching, where you like basically if you hover over an issue title from the issue list, we go ahead and make the request. So that way, like, what is it? Prefetch.
Oh, like prefetching. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's quite
Are we doing
huge.
that?
We're not currently. We should.
Well, that right there, like, would probably save like a good, sec. Because the thing that I noticed when like going through some of the site speed stuff and the Lighthouse tools was like noticing that the initial request just to get the DOM back to start loading the issue was a second and a half. So like we're like in most issues, we're not even starting to fetch any data for the issue and for the first second and a half. So if we can eliminate that with like a prefetch when they hover in the right situations, the perceived performance would be phenomenal, in my opinion. So that's another option. I'd rather do that than game the number. That's just me.
Jake or Don or anyone really, but did we find any meaningful or reliable interactive metric other than just the paint metrics? Because I'm still of the opinion that that's, again, for end users, so it's like hard to get numbers on, but that seems to be where more of our wait time is. Like we get the first paint happen and then the page freezes for 5 to 10 seconds while JS does stuff, and then you can interact. So I understand that time to interactive, I think, is unreliable for measurements, or hard to get like a meaningful, repeatable metric on compared to paint metrics, but it still seems like a good thing to be able to keep track of.
I don't know the answer to your question. My understanding of, well, no, I guess I'm wrong on that. I was thinking that this, like the way this largest contentful paint metric is being recorded actually would be interactable, but it doesn't appear that it guarantees that. So
it doesn't. I just ran Lighthouse and like on an Epic, and the largest contentful paint was 2 seconds, but the time to interactive is 3.3. So it's definitely different. And I've noticed, at least through Lighthouse, another like site speed or something else could be reporting it differently, but our largest contentful paint is dramatically slower than what our site speed, whatever the other thing we're using to measure it reports. And the time to interactive is always much higher than the largest contentful paint. So to back your theory, Simon, I believe that's important to look at as well.
yeah, there's this pretty dense Grafana dashboard, which I can drop a link to, that I'm trying to figure out how to, it actually appears to be showing no data right now, so I'm not sure what's going on there, but I know that there's a way to get into the various timing metrics that SiteSpeed offers, and I think the interactivity stuff should be in there, but it might be easier to get to just from the SiteSpeed interface, because this doesn't appear to be working at all. Something I think that like Tim is doing a good job of, at least on some of the front end stuff at a very high level, is like kind of like making stuff easy to work on. So for example, like the font awesome, swapping those out for the GitLab SVGs and things like that, like doing a very good job of like bubbling up that work and distributing it around the team so that it gets done. And I think we as EMs can kind of try to do a better job of getting to that point with like the individual team stuff on performance stuff, like just like bubbling up the very easy to take action on things that we can do, rather than having like, I think right now we have a list of sort of like nebulous, like this is slow type issues that like are informative for finding out things are not super great, but not super, like it's hard to translate that from like that issue into like, okay, I'm going to take this action, it's going to make an improvement. So it's something I've been trying to spend some more time on, is just like thinking about how we can actually document that stuff and make it kind of just easy to pick up. Like you finish your big feature work that you're working on, you want a mental break, and you can go just like knock out some sort of simple action for improving performance. But that's a lot of work too, to like get to that point. So yeah, if you have ideas, that'd be great.
I don't have any. I definitely agree that that's a super useful thing to do in terms of getting bigger things done, is once we get them to the kind of lots of small issues stage, then they tend to just take care of themselves. So if we can find anything like that for performance, like do these small things, that'd be great. I'll have a think.
Yeah, and I'm just reading through the product KR issue, and it looks like Tim did call out that it would be nice if we had like a list of the top 5 items to solve, because once we know what that is, I think it'll be easier to actually create the issues off of how to solve for those things, and then being able to distribute that should be fairly easy. But
Yeah,
as far as like oh, sorry, go ahead, Sam.
No, you continue.
I was just gonna say, as far as the TTI stuff, that's the same conversation where it kind of faded 2 weeks ago onto whether we want to use TTI or some interactive metric as opposed to just the site speed score or the speed index. But we should probably bring that conversation back up and see if we can. I'm okay with using TTI, because while it may not be reliable, like if we're measuring it enough, and we can get a baseline and we can see an improvement, it's enough of an improvement on something that matters, where that's more important than really having a super reliable metric there. That makes sense.
It's also a like good realization is that performance isn't just a single number. Anytime you get like performance stats, it's going to be different for every single person and every single page load. So it's more you get like your chart of here's the range of performances. And that's why you have your 95% or whatever else you aim for. I think 75% is what the web.dev suggestion is, like 75th percentile. But yeah, we're not going to get to an exact number. It's still just like a spectrum of performances. In terms of prioritizing, I think the 5 most visited pages is a very sensible and good starting point, like looking for highest traffic pages, and then on each of those, just finding like the slowest things and starting from there is about the most sensible approach that I can think of for this.
I noticed we load a lot of, I don't know what our Webpack chunking strategy is, but some of the stuff I saw in the Lighthouse reports showed that we were loading a bunch of unused JavaScript, and when I looked in some of the basically like bundles, they were things that we never ever would use on the issue page, for example. So I didn't know if that would like be also a strategy of just like not loading things that we don't need, unused that we don't need them.
Yes, that's a very good way.
Actually, it's kind of a noob question, but is the webpack.config that's in, I guess it's in the config like root directory, is that sort of the whole webpack config for GitLab, or is there more magic happening somewhere else with the Vue stuff? I mean, this is a relatively like
the webpack
config
is basically everything.
Okay.
I haven't written one in like a couple of years from scratch, but when I read that one, I was extremely confused. A lot of things, but
well, if you're reading a Webpack config file, you're probably extremely confused.
Well, I wrote enough. I wrote enough of them over like a 4-year period of time where like it almost was like home. And when I read that one, maybe everything's changed so much, but it didn't feel like home anymore at all.
No, everything actually got simpler with most Webpack configs. Ours has a lot of extra stuff in it.
Yeah, I think
like
this one reads like
parts.
an older one rather than a newer one. But I was curious. I didn't see much about like explicit tree shaking in there. Maybe I just wasn't finding it. I'm just trying to figure out like how that's done, because I know there's a couple different strategies with regards to like exclude or like chunking up your JavaScript. So I wasn't sure how it's actually being determined what's getting loaded into what page, or if it is at all, or if it's just sort of.
We have super fine grained per page splitting for stuff in the pages folders. And those are like borderline too small. Most of those are like 1K or less because the page specific code's tiny. And then we end up with a bunch of shared libraries, like main.js is still huge. And we've got like common and vendor and some other ones that are, it's code that ends up being on 90% of pages. So it ends up being shared. But then it just means that we have, like it gets added there if it's on, say, 3 or more pages, which means we have more shared code than we actually want a lot of the time. It's a challenging problem.
Yeah, that's tricky. And you probably end up with like diminishing returns on splitting it too fine-grained, because then you're paying like request costs instead of download costs, and it's basically the same, you know, a full trade-off.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Hard
even
problem.
if you go for like excessive breaking of load just the exact code you need on each page, then you're going to be loading the same libraries on different pages. So then going from like list to detail page, then you're loading a lot of the same code twice, rather than if you have the same thing, like your shared library, then you just load that once and then it's cached the second time.
Yeah, the problem, at least for .com, is that if we're deploying a ton of times a day and we're changing that, then the cache breaks, and you have to like, you know, in any given one day, depending on how many production deploys, you could be having to like get a fresh set of all of the bundles basically several times. And it's hard. I've been through this before, so I have empathy. It's hard. It's a hard problem to solve.
Call it. Unless anyone wants to talk about anything else.
It's good to see y'all.
Okay. Good to see you all too. Good conversation.
Bye, everyone. Have a great night or day.
Bye.
Thanks.
We don't use
Bye.
Zoom reactions
See ya.
enough.
Wow, I can do that.
Bye.
Bye.